Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jordyn and welcome to today's video where I am going to be embarking upon reading the top 10 romance books of 2022 as determined by the Goodreads Choice Awards. I did just recently do a very similar video for the mystery thriller category, so if you missed that and want to watch it, I will link it below. But I had so much fun reading all of those books and doing my own ranking and comparing it to the Goodreads Choice Award results. And the reason that I also wanted to do this for the romance category is because when the original nominees were announced, I also did a reaction video for that, which I will link below if you haven't seen it. But out of the initial 20 nominees in the romance category, I had already read 7 of them, which I was personally surprised by. I don't consider romance one of my most read genres, but this past summer I definitely got into a little bit of a romance kick. And lately I have been discovering that I actually do like some romance books. I'm a little bit particular about what I like within them, but it's been fun honing in those tastes and figuring out what authors and tropes I most enjoy in romance books. So the Goodreads Choice Awards are now over. The final round of voting consists of 10 books within each category, and in that final round of the 10 books that were finalists, I have already read 5 of them, which again, I'm pleasantly surprised by. And I want to read the other 5 in order to do my overall ranking of the top 10 romance books, and again, compare it to the final results of the awards. So let's go ahead and talk about the top 10 books in the romance category, which ones I've already read and how I would rank those, as well as the books that I will be reading for this video. So the number 1 book in the romance category of the 2022 Goodreads Choice Awards was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I have read this book. I have read all 3 of Emily Henry's adult contemporary romances that she has put out recently. This is kind of an enemies to lovers trope where we have this one woman who is a New York City businesswoman. She works within publishing. I think she's a literary agent, and she is trying to get this book published for one of her clients, and she meets with this guy who is an editor, and he's just very cold and off-putting to her, so they get off on the wrong foot, and then they end up both in this small town together where she's on vacation. He's originally from that town. A love story ensues. I have read this one, like I mentioned. I will save my thoughts for in just a minute when I get to ranking my books, but I do not have to read this for this video. In the number 2 and 3 spots, we have 2 Colleen Hoover books. We have Reminders of Him and It Starts With Us. I've also read both of these. Reminders of Him is about this woman who has just gotten out of prison. She is trying to get her life back on track, and part of that is trying to get back in contact with her daughter, who she actually birthed in prison. But because of multiple reasons, she doesn't have custody. She's not allowed to see the daughter, but she's trying to change that. And along the way, there is a romance. Very emotional and not a light and fluffy romance by any means. And then It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover is the sequel to a book called It Ends With Us. This is a continuation of that first book, so it's a little bit of a spoiler to say what it's about, but I absolutely loved It Ends With Us and was really excited to read this sequel and new release this year when it came out. In the number 4 spot, we have Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. I have not read this book, but I have heard a lot about Ali Hazelwood as an author. The books that she writes are some of the most polarizing that I see. Some people absolutely love them, some people absolutely hate them. I have heard criticism that all of her stories kind of feel the same, but since I haven't read any of them, I think I have a good chance of enjoying this one. I believe this is a STEM-centered romance where both of these main characters work within the science, technology, engineering, and math industry. I also work within the STEM industry, so I'm hoping that that works for me and hoping I'm on the love side of this book. Number 5 is Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. This is a childhood friends to lovers romance about these 2 teenagers who grow up next to each other on their lake houses. They start as friends, and as they grow up, a relationship develops, something tears them apart, and then we're now following them several years later where something is drawing them back to their hometown and making them rekindle their relationship. Have read it and excited to talk about it. In 6th place is Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. I do not have a copy of this book physically, but I have already read it. And to be honest, I don't really remember what it's about. I think it's about this girl who comes to this small town, and she has a twin sister who lived there or something and has a really bad reputation. So when the sister first comes to the town, everybody is mean to her and hates her. And then they realize she's a twin, so she's not like her sister at all. So she's kind of repairing her reputation, and she gets to know like a bartender or a local guy in the town. They form a romance. I definitely have thoughts on this one, and I'll share them in my ranking. In 7th place is Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. This is a sapphic romance that I don't really know anything about, and I'm very excited to read because I haven't read it yet. The only LGBTQ book on this list, I'm pretty sure. Landing in 8th place is Twisted Hate by Anna Huang. This is the third book in a series, and speaking of series, actually the next 3 books I'm going to talk about are all later books in series, and I wasn't sure how I was going to address that before I started this video. As far as I understand, a lot of romance series can actually be read as standalones because typically they don't follow a continuation of the first book, they just follow different characters that might have appeared in the first book. So I was wondering for this video, when I have books 2 and 3 in a series, should I read those first books first as part of the video so that I have that understanding, or should I do what I did in my thriller video and just read the first book in the series as kind of a stand-in for the later books? And because these later books are not true continuations of those first stories, and often from my understanding in romance series, they can have different tropes as well in the different books, and that can make a big difference in someone's enjoyment. I didn't think that substitution method would be quite right. So then I was wondering, do I read all of the books in the series leading up to the sequels, or can I just read the books on the list as standalones? I asked this question in my January TBR video, and the most common response I got was that I should read the first books in the series to really get an understanding of the characters and the backstories. So that is what I decided to do. So I have already pre-read some books in preparation for this list video, but Twisted Hate is an exception because I read the first book in this series and I hated it. I gave it 1 star. I do have a Goodreads review that kind of goes into my thoughts on why exactly I hated it, but after that happened, there's still a second book in the series before this one comes, and I've decided I'm not reading that second book. I'm just gonna go right into the third book, which I think is okay because I was looking at the synopses of these books in the series, and the first book in the series follows the sister in a sister-brother duo. The third book follows the brother in that duo, so I actually know who he is now. The second book, I didn't even recognize those character names, so I don't remember how they appeared in the first book. So I don't really care about their love story. So I'm just gonna go into the third book. Yes, I am still reading from this series, even though I gave the first book 1 star. I'm doing it for the content. I'm doing it as the completionist that I am. I want to read every single book on this list, so we're doing it. Getting into happier topics, in 9th place is Terms and Conditions by Lauren Asher. This is the second book in a series. The first book is called The Fine Print. I did read this book and I did enjoy it, so I am excited to continue on in the same series. This first book introduced us to this family of 3 brothers whose grandfather has passed away, and he was the owner of this amusement park called Dreamland, which from what I can understand is basically a direct replacement for Disneyland. And the grandfather left in his will some things that the sons had to complete in order to earn their inheritance to Dreamland. So this first book followed one of the brothers, really enjoyed it, and the second book, as far as I understand, follows another one of the brothers. I think the third book in the series is coming out this year, so hoping that I do enjoy the second one so I can read the third one and round out the series. And then in 10th place on this list is Hook, Line, and Sinker by Tessa Bailey. This is also the second book in a series. The first book was called It Happened One Summer. I just finished reading that book and I was very pleasantly surprised by it. It's about these 2 sisters who have grown up pretty rich and spoiled, and they're sent to this coastal town to learn to live on their own. The first book follows one of the sisters and her love story. This second book follows the other sister. I'm very excited to read this one because this sister seems a lot less spoiled than the first one, but I'm interested to see still how her being raised rich affects her personality and her ability to form a relationship with somebody. So I have high hopes for this. So before I get into reading these 5 books that I haven't read yet, let's go ahead and rank the books that I have. How interesting that the 5 books that I've read in this list are all in the top 6. Again, I feel like that's pretty good of myself. So at the bottom of my list is going to be Things We Never Got Over. I rated this 2 stars. I thought this book was far too long. It didn't have any sort of actual plot to it that I was interested in. It was really just about this couple's relationship, and I didn't care enough about them as people to root for their relationship. So very much not the romance for me. Unfortunately, right above that book in the 4th place spot, I'm gonna put Book Lovers. This is my least favorite of Emily Henry's adult contemporary romances that I've read. My favorite is People We Meet on Vacation, and my second favorite is Beach Read. This one I gave 3 stars, and I think it's just because it's not my favorite trope. I don't love enemies to lovers, and I also don't love small town romances. I think I would have loved this even more if it was set in New York City, where both of these characters are from, but because it was in that small town, just a little too cutesy for me. So again, 3 stars, and putting it in the 4th place spot for now. Just above that, I'm going to put Every Summer After. I did really enjoy this. I gave it 4 stars. Childhood friends to lovers is one of my favorite tropes, I am realizing, so this really worked for me. I also loved the summer lake atmosphere. Some people didn't love this because the flashback scenes to when they were teenagers do read very young adult in nature. but I don't mind young adult books, so it all pretty much worked for me. I gave it 4 stars. Not an all-time favorite book, but a solid romance read in my opinion. Which leaves the 2 Colleen Hoover books. It's no secret that I am a Colleen Hoover fan, and both of these 2 are 4 stars for me, but if I have to rank them, in second place I'm gonna put It Starts With Us. I didn't love this book as much as the first one in the series. I did really enjoy it as a continuation, but I didn't find it wholly necessary. So putting that in second place, and it was a 4-star read for me. And at the top of the list for now is Reminders of Him. This book did impact me because it's a mother looking for her daughter. I definitely related to her because I do have a daughter. I teared up at the end of this. So in general, it was a great reading experience for me. Not a favorite book, not a favorite Colleen Hoover even. I only gave it 4 stars, but it is the best romance that I think I read this last year and is going at the top of my list for now. So we will see if any of the books I'm about to read can overtake my top books. I will come back and update as I finish each one, tell you where it falls in my ranking, and then again, at the end of this video, I will come back with my overall list, compare it to Goodreads' overall list, and we'll see what I think about the top 10 best romances of 2022. All right, I actually have a double update for you because I did finish 2 books on this list already. I read one physically and one on audio, and they just so happened to finish up around the same time. So which one to start with? I think I'll start with Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. I was very unsure what I was gonna think about this book going into it. I've seen such polarized reviews on Ali Hazelwood's writing that I didn't know if I would find it too fan-fiction-y, too casual, and like these characters aren't real characters, or if I would gravitate towards the STEM setting and the characters working in STEM fields. And I'm so happy that it was the latter. I really enjoyed this. I can see why this writing wouldn't work for some people because it is very casual, not only in what the characters are saying in their dialogue, but also just in the writing. She would write little like jokes and things into the narration, and that didn't bother me at all. It really just made me feel like this book had a personality, which I enjoyed. And again, I did really enjoy the STEM focus of this book. I will say there was some engineering slander. Ali Hazelwood is a neuroscientist, and so is this main character. And the love interest is an engineer, and it's a hate-to-love romance. As he's leading his engineering team, there's a lot of stereotyping and things going on. And I have an engineering degree, so I kind of wanted to just be like, not all engineering teams, you know? Just like what this main character goes through within the neuroscience world. Couldn't we transfer some of that over to the E within STEM? But that's pretty nitpicky. And otherwise, I really enjoyed reading about the project that these 2 characters are working on. The basic synopsis of this book is that our main character is a neuroscientist, and she is being paired up with this guy as the lead engineer for a project that NASA is working on to make helmets that stimulate the astronauts' brains and make them more effective and efficient making decisions while in space. And I thought that was super compelling. It was the type of science that I really like in books that is believable enough and explained enough using real science that I can get on board, even though I realize that it's fictional science. I also, again, just really liked these characters' personalities, and I thought they fit well together. I liked kind of their banter and stuff. The whole reason why they had their hate situation in the first place is a bit unrealistic and I would say unprofessional, but I also understand that you kind of have to suspend that disbelief a little bit in order for this trope to work. So it's not my favorite trope, but it was good. I'm going to rate this book 4 stars, and I'm very interested in reading more from Ali Hazelwood in the future. So now let's talk about where I would rank this book. So I only have 4 physically. Again, Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score is at the bottom here. Because I rated this book 4 stars, we know it has to be somewhere in this range, and I think I'm gonna put it after the 2 Colleen Hoovers because those just did have more of an emotional impact on me, but above Every Summer After, which I am pleasantly surprised by. And then to talk about the second book that I finished, I also read Hook, Line, and Sinker by Tessa Bailey. This is, again, the second book in a series where in the first book we follow the other sister. So this is the younger sister's love story, and unfortunately I did not connect to this one nearly as much as I did the first one. There's just something about these 2 characters that I didn't feel anything for them. I didn't really see them having any conversations that really made me believe they were better suited for each other than anyone else. It also is interesting, this book I think is marketed as you can read it without reading the first book. I don't know if I agree with that, not because it's continuing the story, but we initially meet these 2 characters in that first book, and we jump right into this second book with them already being established friends. And I feel like we don't get a lot more development on how they became friends, why they became friends. It's just kind of assumed that they are, and then it goes from there. I don't know. And then the character of Hannah, I remember the first book being really interested in her because she had very different interests and hobbies than her sister Piper. She's really into music and has some pretty clear career ambitions. And yet, I didn't find her that interesting as a character all on her own. And the guy in this relationship, Fox, his only character trait is that he sleeps with a lot of women. And I just don't have a lot of sympathy or empathy for a guy who's like, life is so hard, nobody trusts me because all I do is use women. And now I've found someone that I don't want to do that to, and nobody believes me. That's just not that compelling of a character. So unfortunately, this book just fell really flat for me. So I'm gonna rate it 3 stars. It's not quite as low on my list as Things We Never Got Over, but I am gonna put it at the bottom of this stack because I did enjoy Book Lovers slightly more, I think. That is the current ranking of the books that I've read so far. Still have 3 to go, so I will check in once I finish my next one and continue telling you my thoughts. Okay, good news and bad news. I am coming at you with 2 more books to talk about. The bad news is that the first one is a DNF. Did anyone see this coming? I kind of did. I DNF'd Twisted Hate. I just can't do it, you guys. This book, this writing, this series is just so contrived, and it's just trying to be so over the top in the dramatics. Even the audiobook, the narrator is like half whispering and making it feel like everything is just the most dramatic thing, and I just can't do it. It's not the type of romance for me, and I think obviously there is an audience for this. There are people who want specifically this type of romance. I think this book probably falls within the like dark romance subgenre. I didn't make it far enough into this book to get to any intimate scenes, so I don't know if this one was as explicit as the first one. That first one, Twisted Love, was probably the most explicit book I've personally ever read, which again is not saying much because that's not what I look for in my books and in my romance. But this book just did not get off to the right foot. We are following the brother in this book to the sister in the first book, and he's a doctor, and his love interest is the best friend and roommate of the sister, and they don't really get along. And then of course she ends up working at the same place he does, and then the synopsis of this book says that it turns into an enemies with benefits relationship. And I'm sorry, but those are just like the opposite of buzzwords to me. I like friends to lovers with a big emphasis on their friendship and how they became friends and how that develops into like really emotional, real feelings. And enemies with benefits is like bickering and then smut. And I just don't want to read an almost 500-page book about that. So I DNF'd this book. Unfortunately, I did purchase this along with the first book and actually the 4th book in the series. I thought I would enjoy it enough to have the series on my shelves, but I am promptly listing this book on Pango because though they are beautiful covers, they are not that beautiful. So I probably don't need to say it, but as far as my ranking goes, this one goes firmly at the bottom. So this is the current standings. Again, I'm just missing one, Things We Never Got Over, right here at second to last. So that one is no longer holding on to last place. And with that, let's get into the good news that I started this clip saying I had. And that's that immediately after DNFing that book, I dove right into Delilah Green Doesn't Care, hoping that I would enjoy it as much as I've seen other people enjoy this book. And I'm so glad that I did. I really, really liked this one. This is about Delilah, who is this character who has a stepsister who is getting married. She currently lives in New York, but she's going back to their hometown to photograph the stepsister's wedding. Her and her stepsister do not get along, never really have. They have a lot of family history and drama and stuff. And it's about her romance with Claire, who is this character who is one of the stepsister's best friends. So it's definitely like an almost forbidden romance. It's not that dramatic, but her best friend does not like Delilah, so there's a little bit of tension there. And this was really good. I really enjoyed all of the events leading up to the wedding. I do personally like weddings, and so I like all of those cutesy little events. I also really loved that Claire has a daughter. I love romances where one of the people in the couple has a child. I know that some people definitely don't like that, but I always do. I feel like it brings just an added real life element to the story because there are more logistics and things for the couple to work through. And yeah, this was just super adorable. It is a little too light and fluffy to where I don't feel emotionally connected to this book and like it's not going to live on in my mind as one of my favorite books ever, but it is a solid 4 stars. So now I have to decide where it goes in this stack where I actually have several other 4-star books. And I'm kind of debating whether it goes above or below
Love on the Brain. I think I connected just a little bit more to Love on the Brain because of the STEM aspects of it, but I'm so pleasantly surprised that both of those books I really enjoyed. So I'm gonna put it right under Love on the Brain. But here we are with 9 books down, and my top 5 in the stack are all 4 stars, which I'm taking as a really good sign. We will see if my last book can do it, can get the 5-star rating. I actually have been saving this book for last because I'm the most excited about it. Again, this is Terms and Conditions, which is the second in a series. I did really enjoy that first series, and I'm hoping this one is better. So I'm gonna go ahead and dive in. I will check in once I finish this book and give you my final ranking for all of the top 10 romance Goodreads Choice Awards books. Okay, I have finished my final book for this video. Finally, it took me a lot longer to get through this last book than expected, but I did finish Terms and Conditions by Lauren Asher. Like I said, I had high expectations for this one because I did like the first book, Fine Print, so much. And even when I read the first chapter of this book, I was so excited because it opens with our main character, Iris, talking with her best friend Cal, who is one of the brothers in this series, and they were like best friends, they were bantering, and I was so excited for this romance to bloom between them. But it turns out he was not the love interest, it's his brother that is like the hero of this story, and he is actually Iris's boss. So instead of a friends to lovers romance that I was excited for, it's more of a not quite hate to love, but like boss and assistant type of relationship, which I didn't hate, but wasn't my favorite trope of all time. And this just ended up being okay for me. I wasn't head over heels in love with this couple. I was rooting for them and I enjoyed them, but nothing super special and nothing that I loved like more than the first one, for example. So both of these are ending up at 3 stars for me. I will pick up the last book because I am interested in the third brother's story and what trope he will have. And of course, I want to collect these covers that I really enjoy, but probably not an all-time new favorite series or anything like that. Also, what I did miss in this book in comparison to the first book was more of the work related to the Dreamland amusement park that this family owns and runs. The first book included a lot of the nitty-gritty of like thinking of ideas to improve the amusement park, and this one just didn't have as much of that, so I was bummed out by that. And I guess a synopsis of this book, since I didn't really give it, is that again we have this boss and his assistant who work together, and the guy, his father has recently passed away. He was the CEO of this Dreamland amusement park, which is basically like Disney World. And he has left in his will that he will give the CEO position to this brother on one condition, and that is that he gets married and has a child. He's really not interested in a relationship with anyone, so he goes looking for anyone who will do it basically for money, and nobody wants to, so he ends up faking this relationship with his assistant. So I guess also it's that fake relationship trope. And yeah, I wish there was a little bit more included in terms of like fun at the amusement park or working for the amusement park. There were some moments at the end, but I wanted more throughout. So in terms of where I would rank this book in the top 10 of all the romances that I've read, again, I am actually missing physical copies of the last 2, but I think I definitely liked this one more than Hook, Line, and Sinker, which I also gave 3 stars. And I actually also think slightly more than Book Lovers because I also gave that 3 stars. So we're gonna put it in between the 3 stars and the 4 stars. So that puts my final ranking like this. And because I can barely hold on to these books, I will go ahead and just pop up my final top 10 rankings of the top 10 final best romance books of the year, and that finalist list determined by Goodreads. This is how I would rank them, and let's have me put up here how Goodreads ranked them. So obviously I do not agree with the winner of the category being Book Lovers. That was 4th from the bottom for me in preference. It's my least favorite Emily Henry so far. I do understand why it won though, especially if you like the tropes and the setting included in that book. I do agree with the Colleen Hoovers being high up, and Allie Hazelwood, and Every Summer After. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, a lot of those mid-range books we're pretty aligned on, and really my least favorite book, Twisted Hate, was also near the bottom in their top 10. So ultimately, I actually do agree with most of what came out of the romance category for the Goodreads Choice Awards, which is kind of cool to see. And I also just feel very accomplished for having read so many books to be able to give an accurate ranking of the top 10 books in this category.
Let me know what books you have read in this category, what you rated them, and how you would rank them if you've read multiple. What did you vote for in the final round of the romance books in the Choice Awards? And let me know if there are any other romance books you read this year that you really wish would have been included in the Goodreads Choice Awards, or maybe they were in the top 20 but not in the top 10. I'd love to know what other romances you have been loving, because I'm kind of in my romance era right now and it's kind of fun. But other than that, I don't think I have anything else. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.